about you? Okay, hi
That's
David, how are
perfect.
you? Good to see you.
Hi, Charlene. Thanks for doing this. Very, very happy
Thank
to have you
you.
here finally. It was great catching up with you at Sydney World Pride, and now we're doing this podcast. Very excited. Obviously, you're someone who's very well known within the LGBTQ space in Asia, and of course, we know you as the founder of Shanghai Pride. Maybe you can just kind of start off with a little bit of an introduction to your background. How did you come to start Shanghai Pride, and how did you end up in Shanghai in the first place?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone, for having me. I thought I'd never get asked. Anyway, my name is Charlene. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am originally from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And starting Shanghai Pride is very close to my personal story. So I landed in Shanghai. I moved to Shanghai in 2005. Well, because of personal reasons, it was a bad breakup, and well,
You were
not
running
all.
away from a bad breakup, or you had a bad breakup in Shanghai?
I was running away from a bad breakup, but let me
Okay.
tell everybody, not all breakups are bad. Okay, I have to put it out there. So I ended up in Shanghai. I found a job, and then I left. I wanted to go somewhere where nobody knows me, and that I don't know anyone. Somewhere, well, a friend called and said, "Would you like to join a semiconductor company in China?" Because back then the industry was booming and they needed someone with a bit of experience. I said, "Sure, okay. I just don't know the language, but I'll go." Ended up there in 2005. I thought I was going to be very low profile. I didn't want to, in my mind at least, I didn't want to go out, didn't want to meet new people. I just wanted to work, save up money, and then move on. Of course, that didn't happen. I myself, I like to party, I like to meet people. So very soon after I landed there, I started going out, hanging out every week. And back then, the scene was pretty small. So we kind of met the same people at the same places almost all the time. And then we found out that, hey, we are from the same community, the LGBT plus community. So from then, we started organizing things together. Like shopping together, sports, going to films together, of course, house parties and parties outside. So we kind of from there created a network, sort of like a support network, and that network grew. We decided to promote our network, so we started this mailing list. Back then, there was no social media like what we have right now, so it was everything was on email, on something called Yahoo Groups, and that's how we connected with everyone else. People from outside of Shanghai started contacting us, asking us how the scene is, how where to go, is it safe? What is it like? What are the places that we can hang out? And we became like the go-to people for folks coming in from outside of Shanghai. Then fast forward to 2009, some of the people in that network were leaving Shanghai, and then we said, you know what? Let's throw a big party. So we'll just put together all the fun things that we've ever done, that we've ever organized, and we put it together in 1 week as a big farewell to our friends. And then we just say, okay, someone just say, let's call it Shanghai Pride. And that's how we became about, you know. And David, it was supposed to be just one time, just 1 year, and that was it. But
Oh,
then,
wow.
yeah, the following year, people started, friends started coming out to us and saying, hey, it meant something to them. The community meant something to them. They wanted to find out how else they can help, whether there's still going to be another Pride. And they told us very good stories, like very personal stories, how they came out through Pride, how they met the other significant others through Pride. And then that's when some of us who were still left behind in Shanghai, decided that, hey, we could do this again. We'll just
Wow.
take off some time from our work lives, and then we'll plan that. And that's how we became Shanghai Pride for the last decade and more.
And what were some of those activities in that first year in Shanghai Pride? What were some of the parties?
Well, we didn't only want to do parties, right? I mean, a lot of people think about Pride these days. They think, oh, parties only. But we want to do more things that were more meaningful. For example, forums talks. We would invite guests to talk about, let's say, coming out. We invite parents to come to talk about how they accepted or how they were going through the process of accepting the LGBT plus children. And of course, we talked about HIV/AIDS. And then we also had a very important part of the festival, which is the sports. So in the very beginning, what we did was we would invite several organizations, different organizations who are expert or who do different events. So the sports group came about, and we would have volleyball, swimming competitions, badminton. Then it slowly, throughout the years, it evolved into something called Pride Run. We even had the Rainbow Bike Ride. So all these events show that we are diverse, and we don't want to just focus on the social activities. Well, sports and forums are social activities, but we want something for everyone. And then later on, we also had more film screenings. We had the theater. We even had art and photo exhibitions. So it's quite diverse, I would say.
And what was the climate like in China back in those days? I'm assuming, we understand that it's a very conservative culture, but it's also one of the most cosmopolitan cities in China. Was there a lot of LGBTQ above the surface, or was everything kind of like a little bit in hiding or in the shadows?
I think I can give you um, the comparisons of when I started my life in Shanghai and to today, right? So when I went there, of course, myself, I was still in the closet, but somehow friends from the LGBT plus community, we would get together. And back then, it was more conservative. So examples like during events, if someone would be taking photo, back then we still use the cameras. Someone would be taking photos. A lot of us would be hiding from the lens, right?
Right.
As opposed to today, if you go to a pride event or if you go to any LGBT plus parties and someone is taking photo, you will find someone coming up to you and say, "Hey, take our photo here too." So that's a big difference. People are more confident of coming out. Um, Also, back then, when we were running pride events back then, very few businesses knew what pride was, as opposed to today. Fast forward to today, you have businesses, F&B restaurants, asking organizers, "Hey, when is the next pride? What are you doing this year? How can we support?" So you see that throughout the years, the changes, right? I would say the positive changes.
And that first Pride that you had, how many people came?
Well, we are a small pride. We cannot compare ourselves to San Francisco or New York City or the Sydney Mardi Gras, right? So we have about a few thousand, I would say under 3,000. And the numbers would be because we organize our events in private venues, in very small venues, let's say a restaurant or someone's office.
Hmm.
So we'll have about 80 to 100, 120 in one setting every night or at every event. So I would
And
say
that
throughout
was
the
the
week, we
first
have
year,
about 3,000. That was the first year. Yeah.
right? And up until the last one that you did, how many people were at that one?
I would say the peak time was during our 10th festival, which was in 2018. And we had a whole month of celebration in different venues because everybody really wanted to take part in it, as in the businesses wanted to take part in it. Um, Different organizations wanted to take part in it. So they had different events happening at the venue. I think also we had a month long photo exhibition. We displayed our souvenirs, our photos, our videos, our ad campaigns from the last 10 years. So people were coming in and out of the gallery for the whole month. And I think that was a peak, maybe 12,000 people we
Wow.
estimated. So I think it was a good number for us. Um, well, for us is as long as it's not nobody, we've done our best. Yeah.
And interesting that you said that when you first came to China, you were in the closet. So were you at the same time that you were organizing Shanghai Pride, were you still in the closet at work? And how did you gradually come out?
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I owe it to Shanghai Pride for giving me that platform to meet people and to find my support group. So, David, I'm 50 years old this year. I think I've been in the closet for 40 years or 40 something years. And Pride gave me that voice. The people that I met, um, friends that I made, the role models in the community really helped me become more confident of who I am, and it gave me motivation of the work that am still doing. Most importantly, well, I met my wife during Pride, so the last decade and more, I really discovered myself. I started to accept myself, and then slowly, first coming out to friends, very close friends. Rather, actually, they outed me first, and then to colleagues, and then to family. I think coming out to my mother was the most difficult because, well, moms,
Mm,
we love them, but we're also afraid of them.
mm.
So I want to say that it has been a journey for me, but it has been a really fulfilling journey and experience.
Did you find that you were also hearing a lot of stories of people who came out in China because of Shanghai Pride, similar to yourself, either the
Yes,
people that came to it or that were involved in organizing it?
absolutely. Every year, and this is what drives us to do what we do, right? Every year, it's because we have volunteers, we have organizers, even some friends who would attend our events. They would say, Charlene, this year I've decided to come out to my parents on this day during Pride. And we're like, okay, just don't get us in trouble, but good for you. And then we will have, I remember we had one volunteer. He he was a photographer and he was volunteering for us for quite a number of years already. And he decided to bring his mother to one of the Pride events.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult for her to accept in the beginning, but because we had that support group, because he was with friends and the friends knew what he wanted to do, that he wanted to come out to his mother during the time, so we gathered around and supported him, talked to his mother. So I mean, there's so many of these stories, good stories. Sometimes of course there will be difficulties, um, but at the end, these stories do motivate us and do motivate a lot of our organizers.
wouldn't you also say that China being still fairly conservative, that it's just more difficult for people to come out, right? And you hear stories about a lot of people that enter marriages because their entire life they're in the closet. Is it just tougher in China for people, do you think?
I would say in the beginning, I thought it was tougher in Asia. I'm born in Malaysia. I've lived in Singapore, and all my life it's been a conservative family, religious family I grew up in. Um, Sometimes I think I'm too conservative for my volunteers, right? I don't think it's only Asia or China specific because after meeting so many people from elsewhere, from other parts of the world, I think this is a very general problem. We do find that coming out, especially with families, is rather difficult because we don't know how to say it. Um, in the 70s, 80s, even more difficult
Mm,
because how do you start a conversation like that, right? Parents are supposed to be superior, so you just listen and you don't talk back, you don't even offer suggestions. But yes, because China is so big, right? And
mm,
you have people from different parts of of the city. Even someone from the same city, they come from different backgrounds. And then comparing Shanghai and Beijing, there are
mm,
different sets of cultural norms that we adhere to. Yes, it is difficult to come out, but then I would say no, it's not really only specific to China. I think in most parts of the world, it is still rather difficult to accept ourselves and
mm.
to be comfortable within the presence of other people. But we're
Yeah,
working
and
on
I
it.
think I think we're all over the world. We're all in the same boat, right? We all have our daily struggles, and I think what's also very interesting is, we all think of the U.S. as very advanced when it comes to LGBTQ rights. But when I was in Sydney, I met with a lot of people from America, a lot of Americans who are very worried about the state of their country because they're seeing like things are going in the other direction, right? With a lot of these new laws that are being proposed in states like Tennessee and so on. So
Mm.
I guess the lesson is we should always be vigilant and we should always understand that everyone everywhere is going through the same struggles. But that being said, would you say that the LGBTQ community and movement in China today is better than, say, 2009, when you first started Shanghai Pride?
I would say it is better. Again, I also wanted to say that it doesn't come without challenges, and the challenges will be different throughout the years. So it's really like taking two steps forward and then one step back. Sometimes one step forward and two steps back. So, like you said earlier, we have to be vigilant, and I think our work can uh, raising awareness, right? Should not stop at any time. It should be continuous, and it can come in any forms.
Hmm,
Also, most importantly, everyone plays a part. It's not only the LGBT plus community playing a part, right? We need to have support from allies, non LGBT plus people. We also need to influence, raise awareness to people who don't know about what LGBT plus, even those letters, what they mean.
hmm. And of course, we talk about China being a conservative society, but do you did you have to deal with a lot of pressure or a lot of stress uh, because you were being, painted as an LGBTQ activist? Did that come with a lot of stress for you, either in the
I,
workplace or personally?
I think it came in the last few years. At the very beginning, I was just afraid to be outed, right? Like, oh, organizing Pride doesn't mean that I'm gay. And so that was my biggest worry. And then if am gay, then will my colleagues find out? And then will I lose my job? Then will my mom find out? And then uh, I will have no more relationship with her. So that was my challenge and my fear. Um, but one of the challenges is government authorities coming to dropping by to our events or sometimes shutting down the venues of our events. I think that's one of the challenges that we've always had to face, and we have to be very um, innovative in finding a solution or talking with them, having conversations with them. But then again, this is all part of raising awareness.
Hmm,
If they're curious what it is about, then let's tell them, let's have a dialogue,
hmm,
and let's
yeah.
keep having that dialogue.
I think that's perhaps one of the consequences of being in a conservative society where people don't just don't talk about these things, right? So if you could go your entire life, if you're straight, not having any time spent thinking about LGBTQ things, right? And so would you say that potentially for whether it's people in law enforcement or some of the officials that come and have conversations with you at the events, a lot of it is just a lack of education. Like they just don't understand why you're doing this pride thing. Like they don't see the point. Is that part of it? Just ignorance?
Well, I won't say. Okay, so one part is, yeah, they don't know what it is and why we're doing this. So that's why we're there to talk about it, right? Because most people go through life sort of in their own bubble,
Yeah,
right? And everything is very set. Okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. You go to school, you get good grades, you graduate, you get a job, you find your partner, you get married, you have kids. Then that goes to this.
that's the
Then
script. Yeah,
that's script, right? So once something is out of that thought or that line, then it becomes anomaly. They will say in statistics, outlier or whatever, and then they want to find out what happened to why are they outliers. So in a way, again, what you don't know maybe may scare you. A lot of hate, a lot of fear, a lot of hate comes from because we don't know what's happening. So we want to find out. And I think it's very important that for us to keep the message going, we need to be calm, we need to stay calm, and we need to keep talking about a message in a peaceful but forceful way.
mm,
I know it sounds a little
assertive.
bit, yeah. So we need to do that. Yeah, I think a lot of times you don't understand, and we want to help you to understand, so you know our point of view. Uh, these days, when I ask my volunteers why you want to support any LGBT plus movement or cause, right, and they will come back and say that because they will know at least one person in their lives, whether they're colleagues or they're in the family or in school, that is part of the LGBT plus community. So there you go, and then they want to find out more. So if one person can talk about LGBT plus to five people in their network, in their surroundings, and those five people who understand, they would do that to another five people, then the message gets going. But it
Mm,
is important that someone has to talk about it, right? We
yeah,
cannot keep
don't keep
quiet.
it in the shadows, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, when we don't keep quiet, when we talk about it, then there will be challenges. But then I would think it is part of raising awareness. It is part of
Yeah,
education. It is part of keeping the message
it's
going.
part of the process, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of part of the price you pay for blazing a trail, so to speak. Um, I grew up in Hong Kong, right? And in Hong Kong, it's interesting. It's also a conservative society, and people don't really talk about LGBTQ topics that much when I was growing up. But it's also one of the safest places, I think, to be gay, right? There's no hate crime here. There's no gay bashing, and Hong Kong just tends to have a very low crime rate anyway. But what about China? Are people harmed physically if they're gay? Did it ever get that bad?
Well, I want to say that news-wise, I mean, we don't hear about that. We don't hear about someone killing someone else because they're gay. Someone hitting someone because they're gay. Of course, there are. I mean, discrimination is everywhere. I wouldn't say there isn't. There will be discrimination. We've heard that through court cases, and some court cases have been won, right, against discrimination, especially in the workplace. So we do see that. Uh, Again, it's back to I don't know, and I'm afraid, and therefore I judge and I discriminate. So I would say it's rather safe to be LGBT because I felt safe, right? And then most of my friends would say that yes, they do. My Chinese friends do feel safe. Is it sometimes they people who don't know what LGBT plus means, they will be curious. Of course, some will snicker. Um, at least to us, people that I come across, they will just have a puzzled face, like, why do you have a wife? Ah, that's an opportunity to explain.
Right.
Um, I would say discrimination is there for sure. I but I would say that also it's not to such an extreme of uh, hate crimes or shooting. I mean,
Mm.
thank goodness for that.
Oh, I mean, China doesn't have guns. I mean, general, people in general have no access to guns anyway, so there wouldn't be any shooting. But what about, in which case, where do people go in China for emotional support if they're in the process of coming out? Is there a good network of support for LGBTQ people?
I think in the last few years that I've been in Shanghai, there are hotlines available. Some organizations they do have hotlines, like the Beijing Center and the Shanghai Cheng'ai. So they've set up hotlines for people who want to talk. And then for the expat community, there's also the Lifeline. So, and I would say that the last few years, more and more people are aware that mental well-being is very important. So support groups are coming up. Even what works for me actually, best support group for me will be close friends who understand, who know you are who you are, and whom you have come out to, right? For me, my support is my wife. She's my therapist. I think she's more because she's more patient than I am,
Hmm.
so it works. Other than that, outside of China, there are international organizations available. We have like ILGA
Mm.
for the region of the ILGA Asia. We have Interpride and many other groups that I have come across through my contacts in the network. So I'm really hopeful and very encouraged to see that. Yeah. It's very
Mm.
important for people who are coming out, who are confused, who are going through this journey to talk to people, to have a network, to have a support network. And even, okay, even sports, right? Sports
Mm.
groups are support network. If you like a certain sport, join the run group or join the badminton group, swimming club. I think it
Yeah.
helps. Yeah, and that's why we need a platform like Gay Games. I'm really looking forward to the Hong Kong version end of this year.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, I think w- it's what motivates our 200 volunteers as well, right? It's this ability to make a difference in the sports world, like you said. It is sports in and of itself is a natural support network, but of course, a lot of LGBTQ athletes they do feel very isolated because there are certain pockets or certain sports where they don't feel that they have the freedom to come out and be themselves. And that's part of why it's so important to have the gay games. I also feel that there are emerging or new issues these days that are very hot topics, like transgender athletes who are going through a lot of difficulty right now with the sports governing bodies, right? And so those issues we are meeting them head on with the gay games because we're organizing sports events and we're creating all of these different competitive categories for people with different gender identities, and so these are issues that we grapple with every day. But the fact that why we do this and why you did Shanghai Pride is we want to make a difference, right? And I think that's also a good lead into my next question, which is obviously you put Shanghai Pride on pause for a variety of reasons. I think the pandemic was potentially one of them. Looking forward, do you see yourself one day reviving Shanghai Pride or maybe passing the baton on to someone else in Shanghai? Like where do you see the future for this?
Well, the only reason why in the future there will be no Shanghai Pride will be because the society has accepted LGBT plus, right? For now, Shanghai Pride Festival is on pause. However, we do work. behind the scenes, we still continue we still continue connecting, networking with other organizations, other prides around the region, around the world even, and we want to keep the momentum going. We want to keep the fire burning. For example, the last 2 years we have um, organized a few online events. So for people who have not heard about us or who are still curious and who still want to keep in touch, they can join us online. There will always be a forum there in the month of June. There will always be talks, people telling their stories, real life, real lived stories of themselves. And for now, that's how we're gonna be operating. Of course, we will continue working with companies because we have realized that hey, companies, they they have a lot of say. I mean, the voice is very loud. They can help, and most of us have full-time jobs in companies. And then when we come out of that, we are consumers of these businesses or clients of these businesses, right? And that's why it makes sense to cooperate with them, to partner with them, whether it's about raising awareness in the office, in the workplace, or doing training or doing a workshop for employees, for the leaders in the company. So we want to keep that momentum going. And one day we will have another festival, in-person festival again. And of course, we are always looking for help. We're always looking for support. Anyone who wants to join the team or who has an idea, who wants to share, who wants to organize something, please, we welcome that.
What is the easiest way for someone who wants to get involved to reach you? Do you have an email, for example, or WeChat that you would like to publicly let people know about?
Yeah, sure. We are ShanghaiPRIDE at gmail.com. We are also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, WeChat, Weibo, and Twitter of the same name.
Oh wow, you're on all the platforms. Are you on, did you say TikTok? Are you on TikTok?
Not yet. Okay, so I have not gotten there yet. Well, if anybody out there is a TikTok pro, more than happy to have you help us.
I want to also ask a question around the general environment in China. I think a lot of our listeners are actually people outside of China. They're in Europe, US,
Mm.
and Asia. I think people generally have this feeling that, oh, there's a lot of pressure against coming out. There's a lot of pressure, official pressure against hosting any type of events. How true is that impression? Is it something that's very obvious, or is it more just kind of below the surface, if it does
Oh,
exist?
yeah, it definitely exists. I would say that the pressure has increased throughout the years. Lately, right, the last few years have been the pressure has been it's more pressure these days, these past few years than it was maybe um, 6, 8 years ago, um, for sure. I think also COVID didn't help, right? With COVID, there were a lot of uncertainties, and I think people were worried also. I would say that being LGBT plus in China, well, you have to deal with the parents, right?
Yes.
Uh, that would be I mean, it's such high pressure. Because the parents will want you to have a family. How do you start a family, right? You need to, right? So they would naturally think that okay, you need to get married to someone from the opposite sex and then make the
Mm.
babies, and then you have a family. But of course, we know that there are different ways and different methods these days. But then, how do you tell them even like I don't want to be married. I want to be a single parent. How do you even say that, right? As simple as that. So that the pressure is high, and but it doesn't mean that nobody has overcome that. I know a few people who have. I
mm,
know many couples who have,
mm,
right? So when parents accept the LGBT plus children, I think half the burden is already off the shoulders.
mm,
At least for me, and for even for my wife, for my friends who are local Chinese, for them it's getting over that, getting past that step, the parental step.
mm,
In terms of gathering, well, in China, gathering is frequently frowned upon, so it does get difficult throughout the years. In the past few years, actually, not throughout the years. In the past few years, it
mm,
has been more difficult for gatherings. Even house parties now are frowned upon.
mm,
So big parties outside in a proper venue, F&B venue, is also
mm.
not yeah.
Yeah,
So
questions will be raised.
questions will be raised, and then
Yeah.
it's difficult. But I think I want to think that it's just a glitch in the progress,
Mm,
because you see the stock market too, right? It fluctuates. So
yeah. But it always
incidences
goes, it
in
always
life,
trends up, right?
yeah, incidences in life always also fluctuates. So there's
Mm,
ups and there are ups and there are downs. And we live in right now in a very this is a new norm, right? We have COVID that restarted life basically.
mm,
It'll be interesting to see what goes on in the next few years. So we have to keep hopeful, and that's
yeah.
one of my messages today. Be hopeful, keep motivating, supporting each other, whether it's through games, through parties, through social events, through even talking to friends and families.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and it's very important. And it's interesting. I think sometimes living in Hong Kong, we don't know how lucky we are that, we can just have a party anywhere with, drag queens and, just pride all over the place. And it's completely normal here. But like you said, sometimes in certain places, yeah, even just having a pride party can raise questions, right? But at the end of the day, that's also why we're here, right? Because we have to normalize letting people be themselves, and helping people understand that when you have a society where people are allowed to be themselves, that's the best way to create social harmony and a stable society. Um, and I think that lesson just has to be kept repeated until people finally get the message right. We're all here to create a harmonious society. And I think that that message really needs to be reinforced over and over again. Um, so if there's somebody living in Shanghai today or Beijing or Guangzhou that wants to continue on the work that you've been doing, do you have any advice for them or any message that you want to share with them?
Well, yeah, sure. First find a support group, and that support group can be the network which starts your community. But of course, in the very beginning, is if you want to start something, you have to ask yourself why you're doing this. That motivation has to be bigger than anything, and that passion has to be bigger than anything. Because when you wake up, you want to do it, and then before you sleep, you think about it. I know sometimes it sounds like, oh, you sound like a workaholic, but this is what it is: work, but work with a passion, work with a really big motivation. So that is starting your having yourself understanding why you want to do this, and then moving on to getting your supporters, your network, your allies, and then the community. It has to be well, whether it is big or small, it doesn't matter. It is as long as people come together for a good cause. And what is that cause? Like you said, like earlier, it's creating harmony, inclusion, like recognizing that there is diversity in society, in families, and then promoting that inclusion, whether through the message to families, or the messages to the workplace. Even you can even start something at your own workplace. You can, because and this is also through experience, right? And the experience is, we in one of my previous companies, we found friends from the LGBT plus community, our colleagues, and then we say, hey, other cities in other countries in the same company, they have their own ERGs, their own network. Can we do something? For the longest time, leaders would say yes, but then nothing ever got done. So we just started creating our own forums, our own networking sessions with the companies next door to ours. And then very soon, leaders took notice and say, "Oh, this was a good idea. You could meet other clients, or you can make potential clients." So it can be just like that too, or it can just be you holding something at your neighborhood favorite restaurant, like get people together, and then there's your community already, and you keep going, and then maybe from there you go to another restaurant and have and create your own event. So there are a lot of things that anyone can do, actually. I'm really hopeful, and I'm counting on every one of you watching, and even if you know someone outside or within your circle who can do this, please encourage them to do so.
That's great. Thank you so much, Charlene. That's really wise of you. And I think it's great that we get to hear you share your experience, which is very unique. I think you're probably one of the very few people in the world that have had the experience of creating something as important as Shanghai Pride in this very unique place called China. And I think a lot of us have a lot to learn from you. So I really appreciate your time spending this time with us and talking through this. Uh, Please do make yourself available. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that want to ask you more questions. So I might, from time to time, send you some of these questions, and maybe we can kind of answer them on social media or any one of our channels. Would love to see you be a part of the Gay Games as well come November. And we would love to welcome you to Hong Kong and take you out for some dim sum. I assume you like dim sum.
Oh yeah, sounds good. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all, everyone, for joining in this show. I really hope to see you in Hong Kong in November. And again, one more message. You can cut this out if you want to, but my message is: get yourself to Gay Games Hong Kong 2023. If you don't go, get somebody to go.
Yes, thank you. I'm not going to cut that out. That's great. It's all about bringing people to Hong Kong. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Charlene. I really appreciate it.